What is up, Sham fam? Today I'm going to be bringing you the essential movements you're going to be needing in Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2 to compete and get those high kill games that you're looking for. Sadly, the days of slide canceling and breaking cameras are gone, but there are some top tier movements that players will be using to win every gunfight and get the advantage over you. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Now, this first setting is just a very basic one that you probably have turned on from Warzone and Modern Warfare 19, Vanguard, Cold War, all the above. You want to turn on Auto Tac Sprint. Now, Auto Tac Sprint, if you've ever played without it, it may take some time getting used to, especially when you're trying to blind fire weapons, but in the long run, it will save your hands, save your fingers, so that you can play for longer periods of time and do more advanced movement with less inputs. Now, settings aside, we all know in Modern Warfare 2 you have four main movement mechanics: tac sprinting, jumping, sliding, and diving. All of these movements can be used for aggressive playstyles, but can also be used in a defensive way. Starting off with sliding. There's no more slide canceling anymore. There's no infinite tac sprint coming from your slide, so you've got to be able to learn how to use this new slide and adapt it to a different playstyle. Sliding can still be very useful, both in defensive ways and aggressive ways. Now, when you're timing your slides, it's a little different because you can't cancel it at any time. You're going to want to have to look at how long that slide is going to take you, and that way you can stop in time to still have your gun ready for that gunfight. Now, as we're looking at sliding here, it can be used in a lot of defensive ways too. When you're running from gunfights, you're running from fire, and you just want to duck behind cover, it's really easy to just slide and not have to worry about it. However, we're going to go into some more advanced techniques with the new slide later in the video. So remember, you can still use it aggressively, but you have to be smarter about timing your slide so that you can still have your gun ready to fight at the end of that slide versus canceling at any time during that slide. So once you commit, be ready for that fight at the end of it or to sacrifice your body mid-slide. Now, the second basic movement is just jumping. It's very self-explanatory. You see people do it all the time, but you used to see it a lot more in Warzone and Modern Warfare 19, even Vanguard. People were bunny hopping all over the place. Well, the game has changed. There's no more bee hopping. So the single jump is going to be key. Is it still in the meta for movement? I would argue that it is. When you're pushing corners that you're not sure if somebody's going to be ready for you, or if you think somebody is there and you want to get the drop on them or have a little bit of peeker's advantage, a lot of people will slow peek that corner, and a lot of times it doesn't play in their favor because that person's already holding that angle and will just shoot them as soon as they slow peek, no matter if you're ADS'd or what have you. So jumping gives you a slight advantage because you jump above where their reticle may be sitting and you catch them by surprise and maybe get a slight little bit of peeker's advantage. So there are some other slight differences when you jump in Modern Warfare 2 compared to the older CODs. So when you jump in ADS, you're actually going to be slower aiming down your sights than compared to if you just move around the corner and naturally ADS. So you want to keep that in mind and determine, is it better if I catch them off guard by jumping around this angle and they have no idea where to be looking for me? Or is it better that I just go ahead and peek this angle normally and have a faster ADS time? When you jump in ADS or start firing, you may still be able to put some blind fire or hip fire shots on them before you completely ADS. So there is still a slight advantage, but that's something that a lot of advanced players are better at doing. So if you're an average player and you think you need that faster ADS time, it might be better to just pre-aim that angle or go ahead and ADS it as you strafe the angle. Lastly, for the basic movements, you just have diving. It's also called a dolphin dive, and it's relatively new for some players that never got to experience it in the older CODs. However, a lot of times this is going to be a more defensive maneuver. You don't want to dolphin dive straight at somebody because by the time you land and you're able to start shooting again, they're already going to have an advantage on you. So I would keep this in your back pocket for when you're trying to dodge or get across a large gap of area to just try and get to cover or a new area without taking a ton of damage by just sprinting straight across. However, we will go over some methods to try and use this to your advantage in a slightly aggro way, but still, largely this is going to be a very defensive mechanic for you, so keep it in your back pocket if you're on the run and need to get behind cover or a tactical situation. Now that's it for the basics, guys. They're very self-explanatory. However, if you have questions, as always, don't be afraid to drop them in the comments and I'll be more than happy to discuss them with you and give you any tips and tricks to help you get the edge. This first intermediate or advanced tactic that we want to talk about is infinite tac sprint. Now, in Warzone, Modern Warfare 19, a lot of the older CODs, you were able to slide cancel and get an infinite tac sprint over and over and over as you come out of a slide. That's not the case anymore, as we discussed earlier. There are a couple alternative ways to do it. However, I don't necessarily recommend them quite yet. Now Warzone 2 will be coming out in about a week or so we may see some changes and some new glitches and ways to get infinite Tac Sprint, so be on the look. If there is any new ways, I'll be sure to update the community. Now guys, I will be putting my controller up in the top right of the screen so that you can see the button combinations that I'm doing to pull off all of these different moves. However, keep in mind that I'm using paddles on the back of my controller, so when you see A and B being used, it's my paddles, all right? If you ever need to reset your Tac Sprint, you've started Tac Sprinting, you run out, you're out of breath, and you start normal sprinting in the game, you can simply melee, or you can crouch twice and it will reset your Tac Sprint, and then you can go straight back into it. Now, it's not the most effective thing in the world, but I have seen people mix the double crouch in with their movement so that they're constantly doing something instead of standing still and meleeing to reset their Tac Sprint. So something to try out, put it in your game, mix it up here and there if you're in desperate need of some more Tac Sprint. And especially when it comes to Warzone 2, you may need to reset that when you're crossing large distances on foot. There is a second method that deals with ADSing while strafing kind of left or right and never going fully straight. That will always keep your Tac Sprint enabled. However, I don't see it being very beneficial, and it's very complex for new players to try and grasp. So I won't really recommend it just yet until we see more use out of maybe pro players or streamers if it becomes more natural to use in certain situations. Now, getting into the other advanced movements, we're going to start with something that's a classic and one that's very dear to my heart: drop shotting. Now, drop shotting is old school and it's a classic move that's still very effective in Modern Warfare 2, especially with the removal of B hopping. A lot of times in previous CODs, people would mix drop shotting with B hopping and it'd be very effective and throw off the hitbox of your character. Now, to do this, it's very simple. If you have paddles on the back of your controller, you're just going to want to bind one of the paddles to your prone button or key. And when you hold it down, your person will simply go down like you see on the screen. However, if you don't have a controller with paddles or a custom controller of some kind that has a configuration special to binding buttons, you just want to hop into your settings for your controller and change your button layout to tactical. That way, you're able to go prone while you're shooting by just pressing down on your right analog stick and never having to take your thumb off your aim. This will change your melee to your B button, but it's worth it if you're trying to learn how to drop shot with no paddles. This is a pretty standard mechanic to accomplish. Anytime you're in the middle of a fight, as long as you're not Tac Sprinting straight forward or something like that, and you're mid ADS and you're shooting, or even if you're hip firing, you can just immediately hold down your prone button and your character will go straight to the ground on his stomach, and it throws off your competitor's aim sometimes and catches them off guard because they don't expect you to drop mid gunfight. So it's not the biggest advantage in the world, but anything to set off their aim or give you a slight edge in the fight. Now, with the addition of dolphin diving, you do have to be careful that you don't dive forward or backward, sideways, whatever, instead of going prone. So it may take a little bit of practice with the dolphin dive added in, but it's pretty standard. If you're in the middle of shooting, just hold your prone down. That way you can drop in the middle and maybe dodge a couple shots and catch them off guard. Now, moving on to the next mechanic, this one's a little more advanced. It's the auto drop shot. Now, the auto drop shot is a little different than your standard drop shot. It's still the same concept that you want to catch the enemy off guard mid-fight or get any kind of slight advantage and dodge some of their shots. But this one is slightly new and special to Modern Warfare 2. So instead of just going prone mid-fight, you want to be in a Tac Sprint. So mid-Tac Sprint, when you're changing directions, going left or right, you can immediately pull back on the left analog stick and then hit your prone right after it, as you see in this video, and it will instantly drop your character model to the ground as if there's no transition between standing, crouching, and prone. It'll just immediately go from standing to prone. And it may sound a little weird, but this is what it's going to look like on your enemy's screen.
I'm sad right now.
No, of course.
Now, this is what it looks like with a normal drop shot. You see the difference in how quickly that little bit of advantage and difference in the character movement will give you that first couple shots or that chance to stay alive in a tough gunfight. Now, one thing I want to point out with this instant drop shot or the auto drop shot is that you can mix it with snaking. Now, snaking, if you've never heard of it or you're new to mechanics for Modern Warfare 2 or Call of Duty in general, is if you're around some kind of cover like a box or some sandbags and you're constantly standing up, going prone, standing up, going prone, so that you're dodging shots, but you're constantly getting information. So when you're getting that information, you're popping up for only a second and you're going prone. You may even shoot a little bit and then go prone immediately after. When you're doing this, it's throwing off your hitbox so that you can survive longer. It's giving you information without showing your whole body, and it's letting you shoot back at the enemy or multiple enemies while being able to take cover directly after it. So if you mix the auto drop shot with snaking, then your character model is going to be even crazier and instantly drop into the ground. So you're going to be dodging more shots, getting more information, and breaking those cameras, so to say, in a gunfight head to head. So as we mentioned earlier, there are some ways to use sliding now to your advantage more aggressively that have recently come about in the few weeks since the release of Call of Duty. So there is no slide cancel. I will not be able to teach you how to get out of your slide mid-slide. But what you can do here is you can double tap your switch weapons button while you're sliding or right as you start sliding, and it will let you pull up your gun and allow you to either hip fire or ADS and fire. So if you look at the example I have here, it'll allow you to slide around corners and start shooting at your enemy before you're even out of your slide, before you're even to the end of your slide. And if done correctly, it can be used in a very aggressive manner so that when you're sliding around the corner, they think you're not able to shoot back, or they don't expect you to slide around the corner because this is a very slow play Call of Duty. So when you slide, double tap your switch weapons, ADS or blind fire, and start shooting them, it'll catch them off guard and they're not ready to aim down at the crouch level at such a fast pace. So this could be hugely beneficial when you're clearing buildings in Warzone, or you're taking those fights in multiplayer that they know you're there and you have to push them, and you're trying to think of a creative way to do it. Now keep in mind, the timing takes a little bit of practice, but you can double tap your switch weapons at any time in the slide, but you want to do it as fast as possible so your gun's ready to go as quickly as possible in case somebody is running up on you while you try to slide. Now I don't recommend to use this the same way you would have in Warzone 1, because it's not a slide cancel and you can't immediately change directions and do all kinds of crazy B-hops with it, but I do think it's a good addition to your game, as I've used it to catch individual enemies or groups of 2 off guard when I slide around the corner and immediately start shooting them before they're ready to see me even come around the corner. Now, moving on to the dive. I know we talked about it earlier being a very defensive maneuver. There is one way you can use this in a slightly more aggressive fashion without completely going full aggro with it. So if you're being chased, like you see here as an example, if I was being chased and I needed to dive away from the person to get behind cover, or I'm about to die and I think if I dive I might just get away. Well, you know they're going to be chasing you, or you hear them chasing you, whatever kind of information you have to know that they're right behind you. If you dive and immediately turn your analog stick to flip your character, you can do a complete 180, 360, or even sideways looks. So when you do this, ideally you want to do a 180 once you get behind cover mid-dive and be looking at the direction the enemy is going to be chasing from. So if you look here, I'm going to be running, dive behind cover, but I've already flipped my character in midair, so I'm ready when I land on the ground for that person to chase and come around. They may not expect me to still be on the ground because they're either going to think I'm facing the wrong way because I dove, or that I tried to keep running because I was so hurt. But you've turned the game because you're more aggressive and ready for them, and it's essentially a pre-aim drop shot, so to say. So something to keep in your back pocket for a rainy day, or just an extra movement in case you need to use it in the worst case scenario. Now guys, up to this point, it's been as many movements as we've seen get discovered so far. There may be evolving movements as we go into Warzone 2 and as Modern Warfare 2 develops, but I did want to include one last trick for you all. So this trick is nothing crazy, but I see a lot of people debate about it and argue that it's been removed from the game or they don't know how it works anymore. So in Modern Warfare 2, there is a reload cancel. However, it's very limited. A lot of times in the previous games, if you had to reload and you were mid-reload and somebody pushed you, you could double switch your weapon and it would cancel the reload and you'd be able to start shooting, or you could start sprinting to cancel your reload and start shooting. Now it's a little different. Now, if somebody's pushing you, or you've started shooting and you start reloading, somebody starts pushing you and you want to cancel that reload, you have 2 options. If your magazine is still in your gun when you hit the reload button, that means you've already hit the reload input. He starts to pull the magazine out, but it's not completely out of the chamber yet. Then you can double switch your weapon, or you can start sprinting and it will cancel your reload and allow you to start shooting. However, the second that magazine falls out of that chamber, the second you see it disconnected from the gun, you have to switch to another weapon or let that full reload animation go through. You can see some examples here. Now guys, thank you for tuning in this long. Just know that I will be continuing to update you on any movements, any changes in the Warzone 2, Modern Warfare 2 scene when it comes to progressing your play style, getting better, and competing at higher tier skill levels. Now, if you have any questions about things I covered in this video, or you have new movements you have questions about, or just general settings and questions about the game and how to progress and get better, drop them in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you and discuss how you can progress. Now, I would not be where I was if it wasn't for the Sham Fam and my community members, so be sure to stop by shamrockgaming.net, check out some of the merchandise, check out some of the guys there. It's a really solid group. Please show some support, some love, and get you some swag like this nice Clover Gang hoodie. Any support we really appreciate. And while you're at it, go ahead and get you some Poggers energy drink. I've dropped the code below so that you can get a 10% discount on every purchase. Guys, that's all for me. Make sure you hit all those buttons, like, subscribe, drop a comment, and be sure to keep your eyes open for the next tutorial video, the next tips and tricks video, and shoot, we may even do some coaching videos. So keep that bell icon activated so you can always know when I'm dropping new content. But with that note, Sham Fam, I'm out. I'll catch you in the next one.